Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello, good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you? It's 7th of April, and it's overcast. Why I'm telling you that, I don't know. However, I'm a little discombobulated because we're supposed to have a guest right now. Right now. Where is he? I'm so excited about this guest. Some of you will not be, but because it's about the birds, it's about the eagle, and we're waiting for the ornithologist from the National Aviary to join us, Bob Mulvihill. I hope there wasn't some snafu, since I was so excited about finally getting all my questions answered about the eagles, and that it's not like I came readily prepared to talk about much else. Jeez. Okay, so, and I have to tell you, I brought my laptop so I could look at the nest as we were talking, and I turned it on and I said to Jess, "Oh my God, how could there be snow in the nest?" And then Jess looked and said, "Those are feathers. They must be, what'd you say, molting? They must be shedding."
Shedding. I don't know.
I said, well, they can't be shedding. They barely have feathers of their own. I mean, and those are all white. And it looks like snow. And then it occurred to me, oh my God! That's what's left of some bird, some fellow avian that they've just chowed down on. And it occurs to me, as these critters get bigger, there's going to be some real... I can't imagine what that nest will look like at the end. I mean, when they take leave of it. It'll be filled with the detritus of so many fish, birds, mice, cats, squirrels. I just lost the picture. Okay, well, I will fervently hope that Bob Mulvihill shows. If he doesn't, I'll be very unhappy. Meanwhile, I guess I'll just continue apace. I have sad news that I actually just got as I checked my email here. I've been informed of the passing of a former colleague of mine and also a long time ago Pittsburgh television personality, Channel 4, Lynn Hines. Lynn anchored the morning program at WTAE in the 70s and 80s. What was that called? AM Pittsburgh, maybe? You know, there's just a few titles. They're all over the country. What, AM Pittsburgh, or Good Morning Pittsburgh, or Hello Pittsburgh, or Wake the Hell Up Pittsburgh, or it's one of those things. That was his show, along with a wonderful character named Al McDowell, also long gone, the father of Sean McDowell of WDVE, a wonderful guy, and Kathy Milton, who I have no idea what's happened to her. Anyway, Lynn he had a very fast-moving cancer. I think I told you, I had the true pleasure of talking to him about a month ago. And we had so much fun laughing and talking about those times. You know what's odd about that? When you get with people from your past and you start reminiscing, you realize in many ways often how rich your life was, but in the midst of it, you don't always feel that way, do you? It's only when it's back there, when it's gone, that you think, oh, wow, that was so wonderful with those people, and what fun. And at the time, when that was not past but was the present, I mean, everybody was bitching and moaning about how awful it was to work there, and they were mad at this one, that one, can't do. There's an obvious tendency for us to not take pleasure in what we have right now. But with the passage of time, and you look back, and you find yourself laughing and crying and just enjoying the memory. Would that we could enjoy the present and then later enjoy the memory. Have it all. Enjoy it while it's going on, and then. Oh, and speaking of all that, did I see a great Christopher Hitchens quote the other day? And I'll probably mangle it, but this would be the essence. One of the sadder things about growing old is that you realize that you will never again be able to make a lifelong friend. I'm not sure if he said life, but those friends that you have that have known you when you were young and then when you were middle-aged, and so they've been through the same span of time with you. You have shared stories again in memory. And when you're old, like me, even if I do, and God, I hope I do, continue to make friends, to channel Diane Keaton at the Academy Awards. Make new friends, but keep the old. I started too high. Jess, do you know that?
I do.
It's around. So if we could sing it and we would harmonize.
No.
You're not going to?
No.
Damn it. Because I love when I'm part of harmony. She's not going to do it. Well. Oh, gosh. So, there must have been a mix-up. I cannot believe this. I was so excited all weekend. I told 1 million people. Jess put it out on the internet, Facebook, Twitter. And our credibility is dashed. And my ability to tap dance through an hour I'm not now prepared for will be tested. So let's see how good I can do it. How am I doing so far? Ooh. All right. Well, hey, how about them Pirates? Just quick. 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. Hell of a homestand. All right. If they keep that up the rest of the year, we're in gravy. We'll win it all. I thought so. Somebody has tweeted us who was at Beth, and she says, those white feathers, it was for dinner? I said, what bird has white feathers? What bird has white?
Seagull.
A seagull.
Ah!
There's a lot of seagulls here now, and they're a result of the brutally cold winter. The seagulls we've got here are normally apparently up on Lake Erie. And Lake Erie froze. Who knew? It doesn't usually totally freeze. And, if you're a seagull looking for a bird to eat, you ain't going to get it. A seagull for a fish to eat, you're not going to get it if the lake is frozen solid. So they've come south to our rivers. And, there's one less seagull. And, a seagull's a big bird. Those are big birds. Oh, I'm so glad I did not see the eagle show up in the nest with that one. Oh, gosh, this is going to get really, those of you who haven't been into it, this is going to get really interesting because the 3 little eaglets they're thriving and they're growing. And the more they grow, the more they're going to want to eat. So all they're going to be doing is eating. And then they're going to get really big. And the little ones are going to be 1 foot tall in 6 weeks. 6 more weeks. 6 or 7. Here he is.
Oh, great.
I'm so glad. Whew. Whew. Hey, you know what we could do? We'll take a break.
Okay.
We'll take a break, and we'll be right back with Bob Mulvihill.
Did you say 10:30?
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen live after this.
I didn't know about chronic obstructive pulmonary disease until I took the wheel and lent my support to Drive for COPD. Help Americans take action against this leading cause of death by logging on to driveforcopd.org to learn more. I'm Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson, and I drive for COPD.
Pittsburgh City Paper's Pirates Preview is available now. Pick up one today for a look at the Buccos as they head into the 2014 Big Aspirations. Plus, Cedric the Entertainer, La Boheme, Minios, and Les Zeppelin. Pittsburgh City Paper, available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com, your smartphone at citypapermobile.com, and on the iPhone App Store and Google Play.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn at pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen live.
Yeah, look who just flew in. Hey!
Yuck, yuck.
I was so worried. And it turns out I apparently screwed it up is what happened. I said the wrong time. I thought 10:30. So you're early.
I'm early.
Jeez.
Yeah, let's set the record straight.
Here's
It's okay.
Bob, it's okay.
It's okay.
Just so you're
it's
here.
All good.
Bob Mulvihill. He's an ornithologist. What got you into that?
My boyhood interest in birds. So very early interest in birds, stemming from my mother's habit of feeding the birds in our backyard.
And for you then, what a lucky kid.
Yeah.
The National Aviary turns out to be in your hometown.
How about that?
And you end up being the ornithologist at it?
Pretty great.
Unbelievable. That's like growing up here, really loving football, and ending up being the quarterback of the Steelers or something.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, you're a
I'm
lucky
very
guy.
Happy to be
you're
here.
You're a lucky guy.
Yeah.
Well, you're here, right here, because I, like so many others, have become just...
You're not alone. I'm with you. I love it. I love it.
When I first I sat for hours on end watching them sit on the eggs. I did, and I was telling my brother in Ann Arbor's now, my family in Chicago, Wisconsin, everywhere. They're all like, "Did you see?" Blah blah blah, and it's just getting more and more amazing.
Yeah, it is. And Lynn, understand that last year when they were nesting, there was a bunch of us who spent literally hundreds of hours each down on the trail looking up at the nest, not knowing what was inside the nest, not being able to see the chicks or all the intimate behaviors we're seeing now. And we would often wait for 2 hours just to see one of the eagles. The female would be sitting on the nest, and then the male would be gone for 2 hours, and we'd be thrilled for just seeing him fly in. So now this camera has it's just been real eye-opening.
So how unusual is this that there's other cameras around the country.
There are other cameras.
Nests, but how
sure, there are other cameras around the country. This is the only camera on a bald eagle nest in Pennsylvania, so it makes it very unusual. It makes it original for us.
So when was this where the nest was last year?
No. This nest has been a new nest was built about I'm going to say just about 200 yards away from last year's nest. So the last year's nest was kind of not a great looking nest from day one, and some of us were kind of anxious about whether it would even last the season. And as it turned out, it just barely lasted the season. In fact, we think that the young chick from last year, it was a grown chick, fledged about a week early because the nest kind of was cattywampus and it kind of shifted, and we think he more or less got tumbled out of the nest a bit early, but it was all okay because he was big enough at that time to catch himself on the branches, and the parents found him. But they made the wise decision to not try to shore up the old nest and build a brand new one.
So do we know what happened to him, H1?
No, we don't. And no, there's no way to know. For a long time, the Pennsylvania Game Commission could invest the resources in climbing up to nests and banding the chicks and returning them to the nest, and that way we had a chance to track them eventually. But the population recovery of bald eagles has been so stupendous, thanks to the efforts of the Game Commission. There goes the peregrine falcon right past your window.
Are you kidding?
Really, yeah, with prey, trailing prey behind it. Anyway,
Oh, dang it!
Yeah, sorry, I should have said something. But anyway, so where was I?
I don't know.
Where was I? Something about the bald eagles. So they used to ban them,
banding,
but
right.
the recovery that has been so stupendous that there are far more nests than there are Game Commission wildlife officers to get around to ban. So we've lost the ability to really track the individual nestlings any longer.
Wow. So this effort to save the bald eagle, which wasn't too long ago when...
30 years ago, basically. Yeah, 30 years ago, we were down to about 3 nesting pairs in the state. Well, maybe 35 years ago, about 3 nesting pairs. That we're now up over 250, close to 275 pairs in the state. All of our pairs were in one county, Crawford County in northwestern Pennsylvania, in the early 80s. We now have them nesting in about 50 of our 67 counties in the state. So this is one of the best wildlife environment success stories out there.
Okay, well, that brings me to the choice of residents of these two. Mm-hmm. Because you said that they apparently nested in the same place last year.
Right.
Why, given all the beauty, the pristine areas on the rivers, would they choose to be in this noisy, industrialized area with trains going by and cars and bzz? Apparently they don't what? They don't
trains,
care.
Planes, and cranes of the construction kind. Yeah, with salvage yard.
Why would they want that?
Because that's all irrelevant.
To them.
To bald eagles. Completely irrelevant. So what they do have is a very good vantage point for the river and probably some convenient access to other rivers. We think, for example, they might fly all the way to the Occoganee River from time to time to do their fishing. So, yeah, I mean, there's something about it they like, and that's really all that matters.
Wow. So these are urban eagles.
Urban eagles, and there are not a great many sets of urban eagles. You know, we have them in Philadelphia as well. Pittsburgh is the last of the big cities in Pennsylvania to receive a nesting pair. But of course, we've got 3 pairs. So we've got 3 rivers and 3 pairs of nesting bald eagles. So I think
the camera is only on this guy.
The camera's just on the one.
The other 2 nesting pairs are where?
In Harmer, off of above Route 28 and Freeport Road. Near the Halton Bridge.
Okay.
And then the 3rd pair is in Crescent Township, and that's on a private property. As far as I know, there are no real public viewing opportunities for that nest, but that nest actually predates the Hayes eagle nest by 1 or 2 years as far as successful nesting. So
it looks like, given the nests this year, that these 2 learned how to build a better nest.
They did. They built a much better nest. I think
it would be fascinating to see them building the nest.
Well, here's the thing. When I first found out about this last year, when there were some reports of bald eagles down in that area, I live in the South Hills. I drove across the Halton Bridge, down Streets Run Road, and out across the Glenwood Bridge, rather, and looked over and saw a bald eagle flying up toward the wooded ridge, and I just sort of followed it carefully. I was keeping one eye on the road, one eye on the eagle, and I saw it fly right up to this large stick nest in the tree, so I knew that was the nest. When I finally began investigating, where might I be able to watch watch the nest from. I saw the Keystone Iron and Metal Company right there on the map, so I called them up, and it turns out that Michael Thompson, who is his father and son who own that, Michael is a bird watcher, and that crew knew all about these eagles. They had been watching it build that nest for many weeks or months before the birding community knew anything about it. So that's true. So they actually watch it. They'd take time off work, and they'd see the eagles flying up and building that nest. So and they also watched the whole time the second nest was built.
I was blown away by the fact that somebody said the nest weighs as much as a ton? How is that possible?
Well, this one doesn't yet weigh that much. But what happens is eagles use their nests year after year, and after a decade of use, you may notice on the nest cam they have this habit of continually bringing nest material, and so they just keep building, even though it's fine the way it is. They have this obsession about adding material to it. So over years, they can get very, very large. So yeah, they certainly can achieve that size. Doesn't mean they all do, but there's that potential.
So I turned on I keep losing the feed here, but I turned it on, and we saw, and I told the audience, my first look, I was shocked because it looked like there was snow in the nest. Yeah. And I thought, what do you mean? Well, there can't be snow? No. And then Jess suggested, well, maybe they're molting. And I said, no. And even if they were, it wouldn't be all white. What? And then it occurred. Yeah. Oh, my God. They killed another bird, a fellow bird. They killed a seagull.
They killed a herring gull, to be specific, yes. I got a phone call last evening from Roy Byers, who is a good friend and one of my fellow Hayes eagle watching fanatics, and Roy and a number of others spent many, as I said, hundreds of hours last year watching these birds and studying them from down on the trail without the benefit of the nest cam. But I got a call last evening. Bob, are you watching the?
Oh God, I would not want to see
and I
that.
said, I said no, not. He said, turn it on.
Oh gosh.
So I got to see the tail end of the
evisceration.
The evisceration and plucking of the gull. But it makes perfect sense. Bald eagles eat pretty much anything they can catch. They'll eat things that they kill themselves. They'll scavenge things that have been killed another way, so good for them.
Yeah, but you love birds. What about the poor herring gull?
Hey, it's just the way
what
it goes.
What goes around comes around.
It does, and herring gulls are herring gulls haven't always occurred in Pittsburgh either. They're a relatively new nesting species. They now nest, but they never did before. So even before the bald eagles took up Pittsburgh as a home, the fact that we had nesting herring gulls on the rivers for the last about 10 years was a sign of the improving water quality in our rivers.
Okay. So these guys have been eating mostly fish, from what I can see.
Yeah, I mean, last year we were of the opinion that they ate about as many mammals as they did fish.
Really?
I do see more fish going this year, and I think that might have something to do with the fact that that's an easier thing to feed small chicks.
Okay, so I'm wondering. I mean, first of all three are out of the eggs. And the sense that all three will survive is like, what are the odds of all three making it? Not good.
Yeah, they're not bad. The odds are probably 50-50 for all three, and much higher for the two older chicks. Probably 90+% chance, and probably honestly, from what I've seen watching the cam, that third chick is
a tough little
guy and girl or whatever, and so I think that I feel good about it. Now, my understanding from the Pennsylvania Game Commission is that last year, the Crescent Township pair, in fact, fledged 3 young. So that's sort of a precedent. We know that
fledge means they made it and they left.
They were large.
Nest.
They grew large enough to leave the nest on their own power, and that's what fledging is. So that's a good sign. That means that the general area certainly has the potential to have enough resources to raise that many young in an eagle nest. And I feel reasonably good that he definitely has his work cut out for him. The third chick with the two bigger siblings. There's no question about it.
There's something from day one. He seemed tougher than the other two did when they hatched, didn't he?
He has some good.
He got some
good
spunk.
Survival skills. He's got some spunk. That's what he's got. He does. I agree.
He really does.
Hey, by the way, just a little backing aside to that peregrine falcon flying past with food in its talons. Now I got to wonder if the Gulf building peregrines might have hatched their young. So that's something we'll have to look on the Gulf Tower cam to see if the peregrines. I don't know. We'll have to talk to my friend Kate St. John or John English and see how many. They had 5 eggs, so we got. And I think maybe we are about the time for them to hatch. So anyway, maybe that's other news in the city. Other good bird news, raptor news.
Well, you must just be in 7th heaven.
Yeah, I'm pretty tickled. I love Pittsburgh. I grew up here. I'm born and raised here, and it's a pretty special city. Yeah, and this just proves it.
Okay, I would personally myself not eat fish out of these rivers. So I'm a little concerned about them eating the fish. I mean, what are they ingesting? Yike.
Yeah, I don't I don't know. I think it's probably perfectly safe for people to eat fish unless there's been some documented, spill and the DEP or somebody says otherwise. I don't know. I'm not a fisherman. I don't know, what the rules are about it, but the simple fact of the matter is that in our environment generally there are lots of things that we probably wish weren't in the environment that aren't healthy for eagles or for people. Certainly we know that one toxic substance like DDT can bioaccumulate it through the food chain, through the food web, and achieve very high concentrations in a top predator like bald eagles. We know that led to their virtual, to their near extinction not that long ago, and that it was a
That's what led to their.
That was what led to their extinction. They were the DDT breakdown products that persisted in the food chain and bioaccumulated to reach maximum concentrations in bald eagles, had an effect of inhibiting their reproductive physiology. Specifically, it created an inability in the females to form eggs properly. They weren't able to form a hard shell around their eggs. Consequently, the eggs kept breaking under them. So for many years, decades really, bald eagles were attempting to nest and they were failing. So the adults weren't being killed. The DDT concentrations in their fat and blood were not killing them, but they were preventing them from reproducing. So they weren't, by attrition, we were losing bald eagles. They weren't reproducing. By the time there was enough of a signal in terms of our own observations of declining numbers, they were in really low numbers and they were severely imperiled. And that's what Silent Spring, by our own Pittsburgh, Springdale, Rachel Carson, sounded that alarm and made that strong case, and she fought that good fight to the end of her life, and we all have bald eagles in Pittsburgh now to thank for her efforts.
Think of all the alarms that are being sounded though now about so many other things, and I don't see that same dedicated action.
There aren't many Rachel Carsons in the world, but there are some, and we need to continue to pay attention. She was dogged and she was brilliant, and she was a great communicator, and so she didn't let go of it, and she convinced people of the seriousness of the problem. And there are still some people out there like that, but she was exemplary in that regard.
Well, one of the things I've said about this, this is never would human beings be able to enjoy this view, this bird's eye right into the nest view.
Right.
What a wondrous thing. I would hope that schools all over are using this.
I think that they are. I don't know about all over, but I have seen references to schools following this particular pair of eagles. And, of course, there are many other nest cams all around the country and that are perhaps a bit more famous, but this one is becoming very, very
well, this one
famous,
made
very
it
fast.
All the network news all the time.
It did. So, and it's up over 1 million views very quickly. Right. So I suspect the trajectory in terms of number of people following this has been very, very steep, and it's going to be one of the most one of those watched ones.
See, these guys don't even know.
They don't even know.
They're such stars.
It's kind of it's really kind of a biologist dream. I must say I'm an ornithologist, and I've done lots of studies of birds in the field. But in order to get this kind of information about how many eggs, how many young, how many times do they feed the young, all this kind of information, I have to sort of put myself in what's called a hide or a blind on a stool or a stump, maybe 30 yards away from a nest, and peer through binoculars or a spotting scope
And now
for hours
you're
on
on
end
an easy
in all kinds of
chair.
weather,
Yeah.
to get that same information. So there's no question that this is a real boon in terms of understanding what's called basically the life history of a species like the bald eagle, and it's pretty wonderful. We're definitely seeing things that that constitute new information about the species.
Well, I have to tell you that, and when I was a little freaked at first. I think the mother, what do we call her? Nothing. Does she have a designation?
I just call her the female.
Oh, that's right.
I just call her the female.
Okay, the female. Because, if you read the social, do you ever read that? Does it drive you nuts? You can chat, guys, on the side.
Yeah.
And, mommy just brought me. Oh, daddy and mommy are having a fight.
Yeah.
Oh, mommy.
It's so common. It's so difficult to keep yourself from anthropomorphizing.
It is so true.
And I would not say for a second that I don't occasionally fall into that. I don't publicly go online saying that I wish that they would pay more attention to the little guy, but I prefer to just out of respect for them as a wild species, and I prefer to speak about them in as clear terms as I can. The H1, H2, H3 that might be a practice somewhere. I'm not familiar with it. They talk about H1 being this pair's chick from last year. As a biologist, I tend to talk about the brood, the current brood. So the first hatch, second hatch, last hatched. But that's what that is a shorthand for. H1, but see they have H1 as last year, so it's H2, H3, H4. But it's fine. I mean, it's important as a biologist. I would be very interested in keeping straight. Which young bird was which as they grow. And in fact, if I were doing a study, we would want to mark them in some way so that we could be sure, because you've already noticed that the first two
look like twins.
They're getting very close in size. So you want to make some misobservations or misassumptions.
Although you see personality, and they're I think you do.
You do. I mean, there definitely are differences in the attitudes.
The firstborn is a little bit of a jerk.
Bully is the word.
He's a bully.
Bit of a bully.
And even when H3 is the second born he's just this little guy trying desperately to get. He would elbow him out of the way. Really.
No question. It's remarkable to see this. And of course, all this goes on. We would never see it. We only ever see, there are 3 grown chicks ready to fledge. We have no idea of all the tussling and all the drama that happened. And boy, it's fascinating. Clearly, it's addictive. I mean, if you look at people they're losing sleep over this.
I know.
I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend just being reasonable with yourself about watching them, and what's going to happen is going to happen. So you can always catch up on all the news. I would just say that it's a privilege to be able to see this. You got to thank the Pennsylvania Game Commission over and over again, and we got to thank our own Bill Powers from Pix Controller, who has installed the camera and worked out the system, and has a bunch of other cameras on his website that show other wildlife all around the world, as well as owls locally. So,
no, I do. I thank you. I thank you. I mean,
the National Aviary supports all of this, but we actually sponsor the 2 peregrine cams, but we don't sponsor the bald eagle nest cam. That is a Game Commission Pix Controller and some other people like Verizon and Interstate Battery and some other folks that have actually put some chips in on that to help to make sure it runs. So.
Wow.
But it's a wonderful thing, and we'll be down there. I'm going to be leading some walks down there on the trail, so I'll be down there with a spotting scope talking about the eagles. And it's nice to get down on the Heritage Trail and also see that view of the nest, which means the adults flying to and from the nest and so forth, and just see the whole setting. So I would encourage people to go to...
Where exactly do they want to go to see the... I don't understand where on the trail it is exactly.
Right, so it's the Heritage Trail piece that's near Sandcastle that was just completed, and it actually runs, if you're right by Keystone Iron and Metal Company, they put up a big stone wall, so as you're walking the trail, you're not seeing all of the salvage yard activity immediately next to you. So it's a very nice section of trail. It's very heavily used. The eagle watchers try to be very careful about not blocking the way for the bicyclists, but on some days you can get a lot of people who are standing around looking at eagles more than just taking a stroll or a bicycle ride. But I will be down there several dates. It's on the aviary calendar. You can look for that. April 22nd, I believe, is the next date that I'll be out there from 9 in the morning till noon. And you can come and take a look through our spotting scope, and I'll chat with you all about the eagle behavior.
Do we have any idea how old these parents are?
We do. The female last year was still a subadult. She showed traces of subadult plumage. So she was only about 4 years old last year, makes her about 5 years old this year. The male was fully adult last year, so he was at least 5 years old last year, so he's a minimum of 6, and possibly quite a bit older.
Pretty young.
Right. So it was her first nesting attempt last year. She would not have nested. She would not have been mature enough to have nested prior to last year. He may have been, but we just don't know.
So I had thought, though, they don't get those the white bald eagle head until they're about
4.
About
4.5. Yep,
so
about 4.5. Yep. So she is just in her last molt has just acquired that fully white head. She had a few. We could see through even though we didn't have a nest cam, we had binoculars and strong telescopes, and we would watch her. We could see just a few spots of brown in her head. She had a little bit of a dirty edge on her tail, so it was white, but it had this dirty brown edge.
Well, she still does have brown spots on her tail. When those feathers part, and you see higher up into the white rear
up
stuff,
toward her rump there.
She's got brown spots.
I don't think those are really particularly meaningful as far as the age of her.
Oh,
I think she's still in what we call the definitive plumage. So she's a full adult now, but she was not last year. She's just achieved her definitive plumage in the past year.
So what's with the little white spot on the male on the right side? So that's how we can tell
it
the
is.
male.
It is.
Right.
So the male has a disarranged feather on the right wing. It's kind of twisted and out of place. It's a nice little marker, and it's been that way for a while because all last year we told the male and female apart by him having this little gap, this little wedge out when he was flying overhead. His wing outline, you could see a little chunk out of the wing right there. So
what do you think happened?
Just some kind of an injury, a collision with something that just kind of affected that one feather follicle, and it just hasn't. The feather would ordinarily just shed, would drop out and molt in. So he must have just enough of an injury to keep that that feather sort of permanently askew.
And we're glad, too.
Yeah.
Right.
But the other ways you can tell them apart, the female's obviously much bigger, so when they're together, female raptors are always larger than the males.
And that's because they don't fly around as much?
There's no because. I mean, the because to that is it has many answers that have occupied ornithologists for many years. So there are lots of theories about why female raptors are larger than the males. And I won't try to go through them all here, but it's there's no simple because. It just is the case.
They both hunt as much as the other. I mean, a male.
They do.
Female?
I mean, over the course of the whole nesting cycle, they do. But they probably can take slightly different size prey as a result of the differences in their own size, and the male being a bit smaller, and that's true of peregrine falcons and other raptors, probably is a bit more maneuverable and might be able to take more agile prey on average than the female. So
she can get heavier stuff,
heavier
and slower, and
right. So I don't remember. I should have known who had actually brought the gull into the nest, but it would be interesting to know because that might have required some little bit more maneuverability. I don't know whether it was the male or female. I didn't actually see the delivery, but
can you stay for a little bit longer?
I can.
Oh, thank God. Let me get a break in here and then come back. This is so much fun for me. I know my audience is divided into those who think this is wonderful and those who think, will you shut up about the eagles? I know they're not listening anymore, though, so we don't care. We'll be right back.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
BergBargains.com is your best bet for great deals in the Berg. Log on today for exclusive bargains from your favorite events and shows like Pyrofest, City Theater, and the Symphony, plus discounts on gift cards to P.F. Chang's. BergBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. BergBargains.com.
While cutting molding with a 12-inch dual compound miter saw, while holding a newborn baby in your arms, when face-to-face with a congregation of alligators, with the ball in your hands and the entire freaking season on the line.
There are a million places you'd never consider texting. So why would you do it while driving? NASCAR driver Casey Kane here, asking you to please stop the text, and together we can stop the wrecks.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Get the message at stoptextstopwrecks.org.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Exactly right. Okay, we're back with Bald
Eagle Bob. With
Bald Eagle
Bob. I have a full head of hair, Lynn.
You do.
As people who are looking can see.
You do. Bob Mulvihill, ornithologist, National Aviary. And I do want to, I was saying, I want to ask you how, because I've been worried. Before they hatch, everyone's saying, oh, this is going to get rough. This is going to get rough. You're going to see, they'll drop a live pussycat or something, little baby bunny, and you'll hear it screams as they, kill it by like Chinese torture. And, okay, thank God I haven't seen that yet. So I was wondering, when they grab something.
Why is it that nobody ever cares about the fish in that same way?
Because they ain't cuddly.
They're not fuzzy.
They don't have feathers or fur. Feathers and fur.
So therefore they don't have feelings.
No.
Okay.
Things with scales, things that we can't identify with do not have feelings.
Right.
The poor fish. So when they grab with their talons.
They do.
Okay. And that in itself doesn't kill the thing, whatever it is. You get grabbed. Might get wounded.
Yeah, you get seriously wounded. I mean, grab they're just incredibly powerful birds. So by the time those talons grab and sink in, they're severing things that arteries or just going right into the heart or into the brain.
So it's not like
they're not just holding the animal.
They're not holding them.
They're killing the animal.
There's like stilettos on each one.
Yeah.
So the odds are that anything brought back into the nest is already gone.
The odds are that it's as good. It's either gone or as good as gone. And of course, bald eagles, let's face it, we have a lot of other raptors in the city. I mean, how many people listen to your show have had a hawk come and take a bird at their feeder?
That is true.
I mean, it just happens. This is the way of nature, and it's entirely okay. It just has to be okay, right? We can't make a judgment about that. We all enjoy bald eagles, and they eat meat, and that's just the way it is.
I mean, I eat meat.
Yeah, I eat meat.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. I even eat birds.
Yep, me too.
And I eat fish.
Me too.
Okay.
So, so I don't think they're bringing live prey in, honestly, and I don't think you're going to see them bring in a cat or anything like that. Again, they're going to take prey approximately in proportion to its abundance, to its availability in their home range. So what's the most, most abundant thing? Fish. Maybe the next most abundant thing might be something like squirrels and rats. We saw them bring a rat last year, clear as day. We saw it flying in up from the river with a big rat. So they're gonna hunt the thing that is that's most economical for them to hunt. Now, it's not surprising they brought back a gull, because the gulls have been a very big presence on the rivers this winter. And this is not, by the way, the first gull that I've seen them take to that nest.
Oh, really?
I saw them take a gull much earlier in the going. Smaller gull, not a herring gull, probably a ring-billed or even some other gull. But so this is not unusual. And they'll take ducks, and they'll take. We thought we saw them take a turtle last year. They seem to be just extremely wide-ranging, and again, they're going to encounter
they're opportunists.
They're opportunistic. They'll scavenge.
Right.
They'll scavenge off of dead animals as well, and they'll steal things from ospreys. They're well known to steal fish from other raptors.
So I'm looking at this nest now, and it's littered with gull feathers. And it also has probably the leftovers of various fish.
All kinds, yeah.
I am trying to imagine this nest in another 5 weeks.
Yeah.
It'll be like,
ripe.
Talk about a ton. There'll be a ton of garbage in there.
And there will be a lot of remains.
And they never sort of clean?
As far as I know, they do not. As far as I know, they do not. So they're constantly picking out those. The chicks are not old enough to self-feed, but they will be old enough to self-feed in when they're about 4 to 5 weeks old. And that means that all of the stuff that gets left on the edge of the nest, they can start picking at it themselves and tear off small pieces and eat it for themselves. And at that point in time, we'll see the adults absent from the nest much more often. Right now we have an adult there virtually 100% of the time.
But not 100%.
Not 100%.
That's another thing that surprised me. Every once in a while you're watching, and like the mother will take off, and there's three little, very vulnerable things. I'm thinking, what are you doing? What are you doing? Does she only do that when she knows the male is close?
I'm sure. So again, we have a very narrow view of the nest, so we don't know if she or the male is perched 10 feet away. We don't know that. I'm quite sure that that's the case, that she only leaves when he's close by. That said, these young, the success of a nest of any wild bird is not guaranteed. There are lots of things that can contribute to nest failures. In the case of bald eagles, when the young are not being directly protected or covered by an adult, another bird could swoop in, a hawk or an owl, especially at dusk or dawn. A great horned owl could attack that nest and take a nestling. It's not guaranteed that the smallest chick will survive yet, although he's getting stronger every day. But eventually, if there's not enough food and the other two are constantly hungry, that smallest one is likely to not survive, and that's part of the natural biology of bald eagles.
But there's no reason to think there's not going to be enough food.
But there's no reason to think that, because we see them bringing food sort of constantly. So exactly. So I think that we have a very high likelihood of a totally positive outcome here, but I just want to prepare your listeners for the fact that in nature, there are other things. These eagles do not exist in isolation. They are in a forest that is populated with potential predators for them and their chicks.
I was looking at somewhere I read that the average success rate for I don't know what you call it, for a brood of
a brood
of these eagles is like 1.7 or something.
Right. So that's the average number of chicks fledged across all the nests that are being monitored. And the Pennsylvania Game Commission keeps track of these statistics. Even if they don't go and ban the young, they typically have volunteers who do attempt to at least determine the outcome of the nest. Was it successful? Was it not successful? And how many chicks fledged? So that's how you come up with an average of a fraction of a chick. But basically that means some nests raise just one, a lot raise two. It's relatively uncommon to raise three. I mean, it's just a lot of.
So
that's a lot of.
If we get these three out of the nest,
if we get three out, it's a big deal.
They seem to be, and here I'm going to sound like these people who talk. Conscientious parents.
No, I completely agree, and I think that the people who are commenting on this are, what I love about the fact, I don't always agree with the way in which things are phrased on the social stream of the chat line, but I think it's great because it's so many pairs of eyes, looking and seeing details and catching everything, and that's really pretty tremendous. And as an ornithologist, I think there's real value in the kinds of details that are being logged through that chat stream.
Exactly.
I mean, apart from the comments that are obviously not very objective, there's a lot of good information there that tells us things that we would want to know. So I'm pleased about that. I just hope people don't find themselves getting disappointed by the reality, whatever the reality turns out to be.
It does seem to me, looking, that when they're feeding, the male seems a lot more, and I inadvertently punned egalitarian.
Oh, good one, Lynn. I love that.
If somebody, one of you guys came up with it.
Great.
But I said he seems more egalitarian, and then he wrote back egalitarian. I didn't realize it. Yeah. But he does.
Well, so
and the mother doesn't. I mean, the female does not seem. She just keeps sticking stuff down. The big
one
guy.
that's sticking its head up the highest is the one that seems to get fed. And I haven't been following it that closely, I confess. So reading some of those comments by the folks who are watching it, continually has been a little bit reassuring to me. And in terms of, I'm saying that the young one gets fed well, that the male parent seems to be doing
he
doing
looks
that.
over after
that's what they're saying. So, and it's interesting to me that even last year, you talked about, we talk about what great parents they are. Last year, we all commented on how well coordinated we thought the efforts of these two birds were. We thought they did an outstanding job as eagle parents. They had the young bird that fell out of the nest. They had to sort of change up their activity and find that bird and provision food to him outside of the nest, and everything about their actions has seemed to be beautifully coordinated. So I honestly think they are exceptionally good bald eagle parents. Now, I haven't watched 100 bald eagle nests, but I do. I feel like there is a good coordination between this pair, and bald eagles typically mate for life. So I think this pair is going to have a long, productive life together here in the city.
Oh, that's just wonderful. Larry writes, you have a great show today. I love the Eagle Cam. Check it at least once a day. Thank you for having Bob on. Chuck wants to know, what kind of tree is that they're...
I don't know, Chuck. And
how high the nest is off the ground?
Not exactly.
No.
It's up there. I would guess it's a good 40 feet up, give or take, from just looking at the video where they were climbing up to it. I'm going to say it's a good 35 or so feet up, 40 maybe. The tree, I've been asked that question. It's got a really nice, solid branching structure. I don't know. I'm going to be curious to find out what that tree is when we have leaf out and can tell. And hi, Chuck. I know Chuck from
oh, really?
A little bit from Pleasant Hills. Chuck's been working on some stuff for the Pleasant Hills Arboretum website.
Well, he would know that there are there falcons nesting at the cathedral.
Yes.
Isn't that the old Dorothy? That's Dorothy.
It is. So, yes, they've been nesting there for decades.
Ever.
And they're there again. They're up on the 40th floor.
Old.
She's very old. She's probably at the end of her reproductive life. She managed to lay one egg. She got what's called egg bound, meaning she couldn't pass another egg. We were concerned for her well-being. She did finally pass it. It was a bit of a mess. It broke, but she needed to do that. Now she's still there, but has only laid that one egg, and she's not incubating it. We don't think this is likely to turn out well. But she certainly gave it every shot. Probably she will just kind of disappear, and another female will take her place with that male. And Kate St. John has told me she's seen them begin nesting as late as this late in April. So she thinks there'll be a sort of a changing of the guard here at some point.
I thought, though, that the changing of the guard has a violent aspect.
It can have.
Someone's going to take her on.
I think it depends. But the thing is, she's really not going to be so defensive of her position there, because I'm sure she senses she'll probably just depart rather than
What does she go?
battle
She
to the
goes
death.
away and just off into the wilderness.
She
and
peregrinates.
dies.
She peregrinates. She wanders. That's what peregrination. Peregrine means to wander.
Really?
Peregrinate. Yeah, they're the wandering raptor. That's why they just range all over the place. So she will peregrinate, I'm sure.
And whatever
see the
she'll
world.
do,
She'll see the world.
She'll be doing whatever comes
naturally. She'll do whatever she
naturally.
wants to do. Exactly. And
you know what's fascinating? Instinct. I mean,
it is
what
fascinating.
the hell? The fact that these two, you're watching them. How do they know how to do that? What are they doing? How do they coordinate this?
You know why, Lynn? Because all the ones that didn't know how to do that. Right.
Are you saying that Charles Darwin knew what he was talking about?
There are natural processes at work here, and they're so efficient over long periods of time that it creates the situation where everything looks amazingly perfect. But believe me, there's been a lot of imperfection along the way.
When are we ever going to know the genders of our chicks?
Never.
Our eagle.
Never.
Can you call them chicks?
You can call them chicks. You can call them nestlings. You can call them eaglets.
We're never going to know.
You are never going to know. Again, we only know when they reach adult size. We can make an educated guess that if there's a size difference among them, that the larger ones are the females and the smaller one is, if there is a smaller one, is the male. But no, we have no way of knowing. They're just...
When are the little chicks going to lose that silly, gray, fluffy look that they have with those big... Their eyes are bigger than...
They are.
The biggest part of their body is just eyes.
Yeah, it's... I've not... Again, I've not watched eagles grow up like this. I suspect that they're going to start... you're going to start seeing some more... bird-like feathering within the next 3 or 4 weeks, so that they're going to start looking more like birds at that point in time. So I'd give it a good 3 weeks, and you're going to start seeing them feather out.
What's amazing is how quickly they are growing.
It is.
So the oldest is how old now? About, 2 weeks?
Have me on that.
10 days?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, and it's like every day. Clearly, they get stronger. You see their heads up.
Well, when they were hatched, they weighed about as much. They weighed about a quarter of a pound each. So that's a stick of butter. So get a stick of butter out of your refrigerator. That's how much a newborn eagle weighs, and they're gonna about double their weight. I think about every week or so for a period of time. And so there's a lot of very rapid weight gain. But then they'll start to feather out. But understand, these birds can fledge from the nest. They can leave the nest as early as 8 weeks.
But they come back.
They're not flying away, but they can leave the nest. But they can fly at 10 weeks. So, we're not far from when these birds will be big, brown, feathered, almost full-size eagles ready to leave the nest.
Do their parents push them? How do they ever do that first? I can't imagine the first... first time.
Well, we watched. I mean, there's a wonderful video clip out there from last year. My friends Annette and Jerry Davini got some video footage of one of the very first flights that eaglet took last year, and the screaming, it's just great to listen to. I think it's out there somewhere. But it was very exciting, and the bird just powered flight took off. It wasn't just a like tumbling out of the nest thing. It was a real flight. It was a real flight, and that was at about 10 or 11 weeks. So no, it's pretty exciting. It's really great. So they're gonna we did think that the adults were kind of tempting. Would fly past. I seem to remember they would fly past with food. They would maybe not feed it as readily, like you come to me kind of thing. So I think they have their parenting strategies that ensure that the young bird does in fact develop as it should. One
of the reasons I loved watching them just sit on the eggs is that little behind wiggling thing they did when they got onto the egg. And I was thinking, what are they doing? What are they doing, for God's sakes? What's that about?
Right. So when they're getting on the eggs, the female and the male both develop what's called a brood patch. And a brood patch is an area of bare skin on their belly that becomes highly vascularized. The technical term is edematous. It's very soft and fluid-filled. And the feathers are actually shed. So the feathers that would be growing on the belly are shed. Then that area becomes very vascularized. It looks like a wrinkled, fresh prune. Very soft, pruny kind of look, and all of those blood vessels are very close to the surface of the skin, warm. So all of the heat is being transferred directly to the eggs. So when they're positioning, they're fitting the eggs under them to get the best contact with the brood patch. And this is, by the way, something that robins do and sparrows do. This isn't just eagles. This is all birds. Have this brood patch. It's relatively rare for the male of a species to develop the brood patch, but he does it too. I suspect that the brood patch in the male is not quite as fully developed as it is in the female, but in most birds, the male has no part in incubating whatsoever. So in the eagles, we're seeing quite a fair division of labor.
They're egalitarian.
They are egalitarian.
This is a real...
Let's get the T-shirt. That's
let me tell you, if human males would be half as helpful.
Yeah.
Really, they're amazing.
Well... Of course, many human males are half as helpful or more. Come on, Lynn.
More than used to be. More.
All right.
But
more than my grandfather.
God. Well, that's setting the bar pretty low, I think, right? Those guys didn't do anything. They didn't do anything.
It's true. So we've come a long way.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, what else did I want to know? Okay, and I also had the sense that they were somehow making themselves like you would with a feather quilt or something, to sort of fluffing themselves up to stay warm.
I think on some of those colder nights they were definitely fluffing out, and that's creating just an extra set of insulation. Imagine the nest cup. They want to close that off, so they want the eggs in the best environment. environment. They want to create a warm environment for those eggs with their brood patch, and so they fluff the feathers out. And you'll notice while they're sitting there, I know many of your listeners have probably seen them pulling the soft nesting material toward them. So they're gathering that in around. They're just creating the coziest imaginable little incubator for those eggs. And then as people say, well, why when they've got a chick? Why? Well, they still have to incubate the eggs. So when that first chick hatched, it had to, they had to continue to incubate. So the second egg would hatch, and then the third egg. And there had been some talk about the first egg that hatched might have been actually the second egg laid. No, the 35-day incubation period is an average for bald eagles, and I think the first one hatched in 37 days, but it had pipped at 36 days, and it can take 24 hours or more for the chick to actually hatch out of the egg from that stage. Yeah.
The thing that surprised me when the first egg did hatch, I thought, oh boy, because I figured the first thing that happens is they go, bah, bah, feed me, feed me. And no, it hatched, and I swear the female just shoved it right back under herself, and this little eaglet ends up right back where he was, but without the egg. Well, I'm sad on him. I thought he's going to smother him.
Yeah, and clearly they don't. But here's the thing: when young birds hatch, even birds that are as well fuzzed as these eagles are, they really are not. They're not capable of controlling their body temperature. The technical term for it is homeothermy. So if we're warm-blooded, it means we can regulate our body temperature at more or less, 98.6, right? Well, the young eagles don't have that ability to physiologically regulate their temperature for several days or even more, and so it's important that they be brooded. So once they've hatched out of the egg, they continue to be brooded, which means kept warm, kept at that proper temperature, about 100 degrees, or the body temperature of a bird is about 104 degrees normally. So, but by a week or so, then it's able to be uncovered and exposed and able to metabolically generate the kind of heat necessary to maintain body temperature.
By the way, we're being told that's a cherry tree.
I had seen that posted. Not sure? I'm not sure. It could be. I want to.
Think cherry trees got that big.
Well, I think they can. I want to see the leaves. The branching structure doesn't strike me as a cherry tree, and if it's a cherry tree, it's certainly not a wild black cherry tree, which has a very different bark. So we'll have to just wait and see. I'm very curious to see what it turns out to be.
Huh. Wow. So,
what else is there?
I don't know. I'm trying to think of all the questions I've always had, and I can't. And I think we've hit most of them. Yeah. They mate for life.
They mate for life. Yep, and we have. It's not that there aren't documented cases where they have split up at some point, but it's the rule that they'll mate for life as long as they're both living. They'll stay with each other. We have these 3 pairs, so we now have 2 other pairs plus this one, and so we will potentially see as many as 8 eagle young flying around the rivers. Now, we asked what happened to that first chick. They fly off and they spend several years in a non-breeding condition. They're not mature for sexually mature, so it's got time. It's going to kind of wander around and learn the lay of the land and hone its hunting skills and all of that. But at some point, it will try to find its own place. 3.5 years from now, it'll be looking to pair with a bird and begin breeding, and they'll settle typically about 50 miles from where they hatched. So these birds are all going to contribute to the growth of the eagle population throughout southwestern Pennsylvania, probably even into adjacent parts of West Virginia and Ohio.
Typical Pittsburghers. They never leave. They just stay around. Here's what my last question, because we're out of time.
Yep.
So the male from the bird from last year flying around. Do they build a nest even if they're not? So a single bird does not bother with a nest?
No, it does not.
Okay.
They will find a mate. They'll perhaps over the non-breeding season. Young eagles gather in great numbers in the winter in some places by the hundreds near places where there's good food supply for the winter. And there are some famous places like Conowingo Dam in Maryland where I know photographers love to go because they can just see hundreds of bald eagles in every conceivable plumage. I'm sure that that's the equivalent of hanging out at the bar and meeting where the young eagles meet. meet one another and eventually find some companion, find an eagle with whom they can create that pair bond. But that's a whole interesting, mystery. How does that happen? How do eagles meet?
I don't know. I wonder what their pickup lines are.
Yeah, right.
This has been Bob, thank you so
Entirely my pleasure,
much.
Lynn. It's so great to see you.
Bob Mulvihill, ornithologist, National Aviary.
Great. Thanks for having me. I hope to see many folks down on the trail. And again, check out www.aviary.org and look at our calendar of events. I'll make sure that the days I'm going to be down there, I have those noted on the calendar.
It's just aviary.org?
Aviary.org.
Because
yes.
It is
the National Aviary.
Aviary.
And I hope to start a blog very soon for the National Aviary as well. So stay tuned. Pittsburghers, are a pretty good group. So we're doing a lot of. This is a great city for people. An increasingly good city for birds, and we love that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Boy, did we learn a lot today. The same will not be true of tomorrow, no doubt. But what the heck? Have a great day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.